Well, good evening. Welcome to Thursday evening devotions from around the kitchen table. We're with Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church in Grover Hill, Ohio, 204 South Harrison Street. And of course, on Sunday mornings, you're more than welcome to come and be with us at 10:30. Well, on these Thursday evening devotions from the kitchen table, we've been looking at the story behind some of the most beloved hymns of the church and why those hymns were written. Some of them were written in a great deal of stressful situations and mourning situations that give us a lift even to this very day. The hymn we're looking at tonight was written by Fanny Crosby in 1868, and it's titled "Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior." You may be able to hear it playing in the background. It's number 351 in the United Methodist Hymnal, if you happen to have a hymnal and you'd like to look that up. Or you can do a search for YouTube. It's on YouTube as well. Well, when I think of this hymn, what a great hymn. There's no other hymn, or well, I won't say there's no other hymn, but what a hymn whose text expresses our fear of being shunned and shamed and forgotten. Can't we have those fears? Sure we do. We learn the lessons of exclusion at an early age. Even in school, sometimes you dread going to gym class or softball practice and its vicious selection process or victimization by the gossip of girls or teenage boys. And early damage follows us. You know, when we're mocked and ridiculed and put down, we get damaged, and sometimes for a very, very long time, well into adulthood. And sometimes those kinds of damages can change us from extroverts to introverts. It makes us turn inward on ourselves. Being shunned or mocked because of our race, our class, or religion, our gender, our physical ability, or appearance, it cuts deep into our psyches, don't it? Sure it does. Occasionally, we'll see in the news where headlines scream from the extreme edge of our common experience of carnage left in the wake of someone just full of rage, stoked on hate, and armed with weapons that cause a lot of damage to innocent people because they've been neglected or they've been left behind. Fanny Crosby was born in 1820, and she died in 1915. She heard the cry of life's excluded and turned it into a gospel hymn. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. She was a genuine American eccentric, and she was known as the blind hymn writer, the Methodist saint, or the queen of gospel songs. She was born in New York State and in rural New York State on March the 24th. When she was only 6 weeks old, she developed an eye infection. The doctor was out of town, so a medical quack showed up instead, and he took some poultices or some warm, moist rags or cloths and put hot mustard on them and laid them across her eyes. And that blinded her for life. Blinded her for life. Fanny Crosby's grandmother, Eunice, became her eyes, describing red-winged blackbirds and violets and everything else that she could think of to Crosby, so she could get a picture of what they might look like if she were able to see. Her grandmother read aloud from the Bible so that Fanny could recite it from cover to cover. And at the institution of New York Institution of the Blind, first as a student and then as a teacher, Fanny Crosby established her reputation as a poet. She dedicated her first hymn lyrics when she was in her mid-40s, so that had been about the time of right in the middle of the Civil War. And then she composed thousands of more hymns. She wrote between 6,000 and 8,000 hymns in her lifetime. Her hymns were in great demand, and she sold many of them. You know, she never got rich off of her hymns. She took to Jesus' teachings in Matthew chapter 19, verse 21. And she took it literally, where Jesus said, "Sell your possessions and give to the poor." She chose to live simply, unburdened by belongings of the world. One evening in 1868, Crosby was visiting a prison, walking down a long aisle between the cells, reciting Bible verses that she knew by heart, when she heard a man call out, "Remember me, O Lord. Please do not pass me by." Later, thinking on that man's cry for help, Crosby wrote the hymn lyrics touching our universal fear of being excluded and forgotten. Say universal fear, it is a universal fear that will be forgotten, isn't it? Sure it is. It hurts to be singled out and shunned or shamed, and when it seems like the whole world is against us, we cry to our Savior, for He too was once mocked and rejected, and He knows our pain. Singing this hymn, we again cry, "Do not pass me by. Remember me. Remember me." Perhaps you have felt that isolation and rejection that prisoner felt. And you long to have someone recognize you, or just to acknowledge you and remember you, that just to think of you as being a human being. Blind Bartimaeus felt that isolation and rejection. When he heard that Jesus was passing by, he began shouting, and they tried to quiet him down, and the more they tried to shut him up, the louder he got, shouting, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Do not pass me by," he was saying. And Jesus heard his cry for mercy and gave him sight. The thief on the cross cried out to Jesus, saying, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Do not pass me by." As Jesus was hanging on the cross, suffering and dying, he answered the man, saying, "Today you shall be with me in paradise." Jesus himself felt that God had deserted him, as he asked, "Why have you forsaken me? My God, why have you forsaken me?" He knew, though, and he believed that the Father was with him. The good news is that when we experience those feelings of isolation and rejection, and that the whole world is against us, when we experience those feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, and rejection, that God's promise is that He is with us always, always. And He hears the cry of our hearts. Do not pass me by. Do not pass me by. If you'll say that prayer to God, you'll realize that God has never left you or forsaken you, that He is with you always. Have a blessed week.